Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Fergus Dolan from NALA here. You're very welcome to our webinar on the Storytime project, a collaborative family literacy project. We're delighted to have three guest speakers, Sheila Kiely from Dublin City Libraries, Joan Kiely from the Marino Institute of Education, and Peter Loughney from Northside Partnership. He's a homeschool community liaison teacher with Scoil, Chaitriona and St Brendan's National School in Dublin. So Sheila's going to start, and just before she starts, just on the questions, I suppose, a lot of you have typed in questions or comments in the question stroke chat function. If you've just joined us in the last minute, if you scroll down your toolbar, there's a question stroke chat function, and we'd encourage you to put in your comments, questions or ideas for Sheila, Joan or Peter in there, and hopefully at the end we've 10 or 15 minutes to read out everybody's comments and questions. So over to you, Sheila. All the best.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm delighted to present today on a project that I feel is really successful and has worked really well. So I'd like to thank you, Fergus and Nala, for giving me the opportunity to speak about the Storytime project. And as you said already, Fergus, there are three pillars: the Marino Institute of Education, Dublin City Libraries and the Northside Partnership. Sorry, having a bit of a problem. So to introduce myself, this is not me, but it's someone who represents me, my little friend Alexander. Sorry. So I take responsibility for children's services in Dublin City Libraries, but I also have a very keen interest in inclusion, and children's services and inclusion will actually be the focus of my presentation, and actually has been the focus of my whole long career in Dublin City Libraries. So let's move on to reading together. And I'm going to start with The Cat in the Hat. And if I reach back into the recesses of my mind, I can almost imagine and hear my mother's voice. And that may be a fantasy. But what is real for me, though, are the emotions I experienced when my mother read repeatedly to us children from The Cat in the Hat. And from her reading, what I learned was the fun of rhyme, the security of repetition, the stretch of the imagination, and the absolute joy of reading together. And this is exactly what the Storytime project is about. I'll only give a brief outline of the project, as Joan will elaborate, but simply put, it involves parents and young children reading together for 10 minutes over 5 weeks. At the heart, again, are the three partners. And the project has been very successful. It's gone from strength to strength since 2010, when we had one project in one library, up to 10 projects in 5 branches last year. And we have one project running currently on Zoom at the moment. So what makes this collaboration work? Well, I think a shared vision is the crux of it. It's absolutely crucial. We have a collective vision, which is simply for parents and children to experience the joy of reading and grow in self-confidence. We have clear objectives. The project is structured in a way that is easily understood by parents and children. And of course, partnership skills are crucial. We three partners have clarity in our roles. The Marino Institute provides the skills. Libraries provide stock and context with library visits and library membership. And the Northside Partnership provides the opportunity to engage with children through the homeschool liaisons. I'd like to thank all the homeschool liaisons, but also at this point to thank Leah Russell, the Early Years Programme Coordinator for the Northside Partnership. Now, there is an element of generosity and sharing in this project, and I believe that evolves from the clarity of our objectives and our shared vision. Obviously, good communications are essential, and simplicity is really important, and Joan will elaborate on that. But just to say, this project is really simple to engage with from parents and children's point of view. But how do we sustain collaborations? How do we grow them, and how do we make sure that they evolve in such a way as the Storytime Partnership has? Well, I think we need continuous proactive and shared evaluation and each project is evaluated by parents, children, and the homeschool liaison. Following that then, a readiness to adapt and evolve. As I've said, the Storytime has evolved and been extended to 5 branch libraries, with currently a lot more input from library staff, and I feel this offers an opportunity for parents and children to feel at home in the library. And this year in Cabra, again, as I said, we are conducting a Storytime on Zoom, and a version of Storytime has been added to the prison library service in Dublin. Finally, connections and relationships are the key to the success of this project. And we have strong, healthy relationships that have sustained and grown. But what I feel the real power of these connections is the library's ability to reach families and children who would not use the library. And now I'd like to look and consider why these connections and relationships are not just beneficial for libraries, but in my mind, essential for libraries. As you know, in libraries, we strive to make our services equally available to everyone. We've removed barriers such as fines and fees. We have online registration. We keep up to date with new technology. But have we really ensured equality of access? To join online, you need access to technology, possibly help with form filling, a knowledge of using usernames and PINs. To physically go into a library, you need the assurance and self-confidence to know that you are welcome there. There are obvious barriers, social, economic, education, culture, etc. But there are hidden barriers too. I spoke to a friend recently who said she couldn't go back to the library because as a child, she lost a library book during a class visit and through shame has never gone back to a library. I spoke to some children from the North Strand area of Dublin recently, and they were petrified to join the library in case they lost their library card. To overcome obvious and hidden barriers, we need to move from an equality model to an equity in service provision model. And this simple illustration indicates that. Equity looks at barriers and focuses on starting points, where we're coming from and where we want to get to. That step up that you can see differs between equality and equity. The steps we need to take, almost to the level of an individual, is achieved for libraries by working with communities, partnerships, homeschool liaisons, and literacy tutors. Those people on the ground who can represent our libraries for us to those who are fearful impressions. The steps many people need to actually have equal access to library services can only be achieved through energetic partnerships on the ground, like our Storytime partners. So thank you, Joan, Peter, Leah, all the homeschool liaisons, all the literacy tutors, and parents and children who have been involved in this project over the years. And thank you everyone for listening. I'm delighted to be with you today, and please add any questions or comments in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sheila. That was excellent, really informative. And we'll hand over now to Joan Kiely from the Marino Institute of Education.
Hello everybody, thank you very much for having me here today. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to say a few words to you at this NALA conference. Thank you to Sheila. You talked about the fact that we're involved in a project, Marino Institute of Education, and also the Dublin City Libraries and the Northside Partnership Project. Our 3 organisations are involved in this Marino Storytime project. And as Sheila outlined to you, basically what it is supporting parents to read stories to their children over a 5-week period for about 10 or 15 minutes a night. And so I suppose the important thing about it, and the reason maybe that it has survived for the last 10 years, is that it is a collaboration. We nudge each other along, if you like, You can see our logos there and a picture of me presenting flowers to somebody who retired from the Northside Partnership recently, Emma Byrne McNamee. Anyway, I'm going to tell you two things today. One is more or less how the project came about, and then how it works. So it began in 2009. So basically what we decided to do was Marino Institute. We met up with the homeschool liaison officers in North Dublin. So Peter's school in Coolock would have been one of them. And we had a chat about what could we do in Marino, which is we're a college of education. We train teachers. We wanted really to do something to contribute to the community as well as training teachers. So there was a decision that we would focus on developing children's oral language, because there was a perception that really children's oral language needed to be needed that kind of focus. And we decided we'd do it through story reading. One of my colleagues, Emer Kelleher, who was a principal teacher out in Priorswood, she had done some work like this before with the travelling community. So she came in and talked to us and shared some of the literature that she had researched. And then I also had done research in the area, and we put our heads together and came up with the Storytime project as we know it now. So we adapted the project, and we called it a dialogic story reading project. And the reason for that was because our vision was that there was going to be a sort of a transfer of power from the children, or from the parents to the child, that the child would become in control of the story reading at the end of the period of time. So what we did was we had all the homeschool liaison teachers, about 12 of them, in the Northside Partnership area, and they went back to their schools and they recruited parents. So what they did was they talked to parents, teachers, junior infant teachers, and they talked to the learning support teachers in schools and said, you know, we'll either issue a general invitation to all parents of junior infants, or maybe the learning support teacher might say, look, there's a certain number of parents that I'd really love to be part of this project, and we might target those parents. So homeschool liaison teachers went off and they did that recruitment in whatever way they saw fit. And then they would bring they submitted to some training from me, I suppose, the homeschool liaison teachers did. And then they came back with their parents to Marino for an induction workshop. So we would have had an average of about 50 parents coming to an induction workshop every time we run the workshop, and we run it twice a year. So what we do is we bring the parents in for the induction to explain how to do the story reading, and then 5 weeks later they come back with their child, and we have a lovely graduation ceremony. So it goes on. The project goes on for 5 weeks, and we ask the parents to read 5 books, so 1 book a week over 5 weeks. And because the research says that if you go deep with the book rather than just flicking through it, we asked parents to stick with the same book for maybe 3 to 5 nights in the week, so to just use 1 book a week. And to help parents maybe to kind of discuss the book with their children, we provide a tip sheet with some guiding kind of ideas and questions. I also talk to the parents about strategies that they might use when they're chatting with their child to get their child to talk back to them. And then when that's done, after the 5 weeks, the parents and their child comes back to Marino for a graduation ceremony. And it's a lovely ceremony. It goes on for about an hour, and we some of the students here in Marino mind parents' children for about a half an hour, so that I can have a chat and evaluate the project with the parents. And then the children come in and they receive their rosette and graduation certificate. So just to show you some of the key developments that have happened over the last, since 2009. 2010 was a significant improvement in the project, because that's when Dublin City Library came on board, and they very kindly provided the books for the project. So we went into a sort of a borrowing and giving back situation then. I mean, ourselves in the Northside Partnership had been providing books for our participants, but it was very expensive. Every time we ran the project, it was costing us about €1,500. So when the library came on board, that took away that expense. But it also was an opportunity for parents and children to join the library, and we really welcomed that opportunity, because it meant once the project was over, parents were still involved in the library, and so were their children, and that they could continue to read stories after the project was over. In 2010 as well, we brought early years settings in, and they joined the project. So it wasn't just the junior infants in primary school, it was also 3-year-olds in early years settings in the Northside Partnership area. So we also extended our training of the project to early years educators. And the role of the library then in 2011, it expanded to allow families to visit the library during the 5 weeks. So we encouraged homeschool liaison teachers and early years educators to actually bring parents and children to the library to help them fill out the cards, the membership cards, and to show them around the library. And the reason we did that was, just as Sheila outlined earlier, we found that a lot of families were actually afraid to go into the library. They saw them as these big kind of forbidding looking buildings, and that they maybe had borrowed a book 20 years ago and lost it and were afraid to come back. So the libraries were very good as well in that they brought in an amnesty, and any parent who does the Storytime project is told you're starting from scratch all over again. So if you borrowed a book and didn't give it back, you know, we're starting afresh, and there's an amnesty for everybody. So that was came as a great relief to a lot of parents. So we also in 2015, we also began to use libraries as a venue for the project. So instead of having it just in Marino, one of our librarians who has since retired, Mark French Mullen, he went out to Ballyfermot, and he used to run the Storytime project from Ballyfermot Library, and it was very successful out there. And then we started including children in the graduation ceremony in 2018. When we started off, I was kind of afraid that children would miss time in school and that it would be counterproductive to be bringing them out of school to come to the project. But I sort of realised that it was really very important for children to feel part of the Storytime project. And I got the blessing of schools, and now children come with their parents to their graduation ceremony, get their photograph taken, and their photograph is often put up on the website in school, and they feel very important with their beautiful rosette and their certificate. What we also did then in 2019 was we increased the amount of books that we gave to each family. So we still ask families to read 1 book a week for 5 weeks, but we give them 7 books so that children can actually choose what book they want to read. And that's really, really important. Research that I have done in this area really shows that the children feel much more in control, much more, they enjoy it much more when they've actually chosen the book that they want to read. So what actually happens is they end up reading the whole 7 books, but it's really good for children to have a choice in the book that they're going to read. And to date, over 900 parents, close to 1,000 parents actually have participated in the project. So that's a little bit about the project to date. You can see there pictures of rosettes, and every single child that comes to the graduation ceremony gets a rosette pinned to their lapel or to their cardigan or jumper or whatever, and they absolutely love that. And the rosette shows the 3 partners, the library, Marino, and the Northside Partnership. They also every child gets a certificate of achievement that they have been involved in the Storytime project for 5 weeks, and the parent also gets a certificate of achievement. And we take their photographs with their permission, of course, and then send the photographs out to families some days after the project is over. It's really important. We've got feedback to say that you know, parents have been put the certificate up on the fridge, and it might be in some cases the only certificate that a parent has ever got or that a child has ever got. So we really get very strong feedback that the certificate is very important to families. I have here a picture of some of the students here in Marino who help out on the day that we have a graduation ceremony and also on the day of induction. And their role on the day of graduation is to mind the children, not just mind them, but play with them and have fun with them, while the parents are talking to me about how they got on over the 5 weeks. And what you might notice in the background there are a series of photographs of people of previous participants in the project. So one thing that we like to do is kind of build up a sense of history around the project. So since 2010, there's a photograph there of every single participant, with their permission, of course, up on the walls in Marino. So when families come in, and when they will, hopefully when all this COVID business is over, when they come back next spring to Marino, they will see pictures of maybe their relations, their cousins, their neighbours who have participated in the project heretofore. So it's really good, I think, to build up a sense that you are part of a big movement of parents and of children that have participated in the project. So now to describe the project a little bit, of what actually happens in it. It's a dialogic story reading project. And really, in most story reading episodes, it's the adult who reads and the child listens. And that still happens with this project, but in dialogic story reading, the aim is that the adult and the child interact around the story, and that ultimately by the Friday of the first week, the child is able to read the story of Love from Louisa is one of the books that we use there with our 4 and 5-year-olds. That by the end of the week, the child has heard the story so many times, has discussed the characters so many times, that they actually say, no, ma'am, you don't say anything, I'm going to tell you the story. So that's the point of the Dialogic Story Reading Project, a sort of a transfer of power, if you like, from the parent as story reader to the child as storyteller. And here are some of the books that I have used over the years on the project. The one there called The Talent Show is very good because it is a rhyming book. And that's very good for children, you know, around 3 and 4 years of age. Children love to hear stories that are rhyming, and it's very good for their phonological awareness, which is a really good precursor to becoming a reader. And all of those stories are very much loved. The Man in the Moon, I know my own nieces and nephews absolutely adore that story. And Love from Louisa, Alfie Gets In First. These books have been tried and tested over the years and are very, very popular with the children. Now, what we do is we give a story support sheet then to go with every story. And the reason for that is we don't like to be didactic and be telling parents what they have to say about the stories. But parents have come to us and said, Joan, I can't be thinking of what to be asking the children about the stories. It's all right for you. You've been doing this for years. So what we did was we provide a story support sheet or a tip sheet for every single story. And we say to parents, if you'd like to use this, you're more than welcome. When you're happy, it's to facilitate the chat that would be had around the book. So you'll see there's fairy tales as well as other kinds of books. And what we found is that the younger the child is, the more we might use fairy tales, for example, because fairy tales have lots of repetition in them. They have opportunities for the children and maybe the story reader to kind of read chorally, you know, like, for example, in Goldilocks and the Three Bears, you might talk about, you know, the children might end up saying what happened when Goldilocks tried the Daddy Bear's porridge, it was too hot. And when Mammy tried Mammy Bear's porridge, it was too sweet. And Baby Bear's porridge was just right. So it's really nice for the children to be able to chant along and, you know, the kind of the comfort and security of repetition that's in fairy tales. Anyway, here's an example of a tip sheet for Jack and the Beanstalk. And all the tip sheets follow the same format. So parents get very used to using the tip sheets. It's the same idea on all of them, but of course, bespoke questions to go with every story. So the first thing you do is find a quiet space for you and your child. So in other words, turn off the TV, get all the digital devices and put them up on the top of a cupboard somewhere, so that the child and yourself are just snuggled up beside each other on the couch. Maybe you might have one arm around your child and then the other holding the book with your child. Begin by looking at the cover of the book and wondering aloud what the story is about. So just speculating about what the story might be about. And then you read the story, pausing at times to look at the pictures and to talk about the pictures as well. You might even flick through the book before you start and kind of imagine what the story might be about. And then as you read the story, you might discuss questions, and you might notice here that I use the term I wonder. And the reason I use the term I wonder when I'm asking a question is because it's an open-ended question and it invites the child to contribute. If I ask a direct question like, what colour is Goldilocks's dress? The child is suddenly put on the spot and they have to look and think and they're being tested. Whereas if you say, I wonder, it's more of an equality in terms of the power relationship. You're saying, well, I'm not really sure myself. I wonder, could you tell me? And then maybe together we could find out the answer. So I wonder what Jack's mammy will say when he comes home with the magic beans. So you can imagine, she sent him off with the cow to market, and he comes home, instead of money, he has a handful of beans. So can you imagine what Jack's mammy might have said? I wonder what the ogre will do or would do if he caught Jack. So we could have a great chat about the consequences of Jack being caught by the ogre. I wonder what Jack and his mammy will do with the giant's gold. We've all wondered about what we do if we won the lotto. And so what would Jack and his mammy do with the giant's gold? So there, I wonder, open-ended questions, really important. The second thing that's really important, these are strategies that I ask parents to use. One, to use I wonder questions. Two, always relate the story to the child's life. That's very important because it gets the child interested, even more interested and motivated around talking about the story. So in this story, Jack has climbed a beanstalk. So you might ask, did you ever climb a tree or a wall or a gate? And you might know that as a mother anyway, but you could discuss it. Do you remember the day you fell off the gate when you were trying to climb into the field? What would you do if a beanstalk grew in your garden? Or what would you do with the giant's gold if you got it? And then finally, because it is about developing children's vocabulary, we might just pick 1 or 2 or 3 words out of the story that we discuss, and we say it and we repeat the word, and then we kind of chat about what the story might mean, or the word might mean, and we might even put it into a different sentence. So we might discuss word meanings like ogre. Children might never have heard the word ogre before. It's quite an old-fashioned word. Market, chopped, toppled, and then you might tell them another word for something toppling is that it falls or it collapses. So that's what a tip sheet looks like. And as I said, it's the same format for every story, but the questions are made for the story, if you like. So basically what we're doing is we're prompting the children, you know, when we're trying to devise strategies to get children to talk. If it's a very, very young child, like maybe a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, and we do welcome 2- and 3-year-olds on the Storytime project, it might be something as simple as sharing pictures with the child and saying, and what did the dog say? And the child might go, woof, woof. And you say, that's right, the dog goes woof, woof. And then you say, oh, well, if the dog goes woof, woof, what does the cat do? And then what does the cow do? And so in other words, helping a child to expand on her contribution to the conversation. But also then using things like completion prompts. So teachers are very good at doing this, you know, where they say, so the 3 little pigs left home and went off into the world to build their own, and the child says house, you know. So completion prompts are where the child finishes the sentence for you. And they're good for checking in to see if the child is with you. Recall prompts, asking the child, where did we finish off yesterday? And what do you think? I can't remember what the story is about. Would you, let's see if we can remember together. Open-ended prompts, you know, asking questions about what's happening in the story. I wonder what's happening in the story, so that the child can remind you what's happening. Asking who, what, where, when, and why prompts as well. But also, very importantly, distancing prompts, which are that the child is asked to relate the book to the events or situations in his own life. So look at the pig building his house of bricks there. Did you ever build anything with bricks or blocks? So that's a key one. So what we do is I give 2 things to parents besides the set of books. I give them a sheet with strategies on it. In other words, strategies for developing children's language or getting children to interact with the parent. And then I give them the tip sheet as well. So you can see here are the set of strategies, and I've mentioned some of them already. Setting the scene, let's see what this is about. Let's have a look at the pictures in the book. Connecting to the child's life. There's a story, here's a story about a cat. He's a bit like our cat Loughney that's out on the wall. Using I wonder questions instead of direct interrogative questions that puts the child on the spot. Getting the child to finish your sentence. Connecting pictures to the text. Highlighting or emphasizing repetition in the story. Getting your child to summarize where we are so far. Getting your child to predict and speculate. I wonder what we do if we won the lotto. Would we buy a new house? Would we go to live in the country? Would we go to Spain on our holidays? And projecting as well, very, very important. What would you do if you were in that situation? What would you do if Goldilocks went and slept in your bed? You'd be very annoyed, wouldn't you? So you know, how would I react if something in the story happened to me in my life? And then my ability to retell the story at the end of the week after 10 minutes a night exposure to that story for 5 nights. So here are other little tip sheets. That's the 3 Billy Goats Gruff, and you can see it's the exact same format as the one that I used for Jack and the Beanstalk, but I'm relating it to the story. I wonder what the 3 Billy Goats are thinking. I wonder what would happen to baby Billy Goat if he fell into the river. I wonder what the troll will do when he hears that the Billy Goat is on his bridge, etc., etc. So there's another one, the girl with the parrot on her head. And then what I also do, I'm not going to go into details now on it, but you know, what I do say to parents is try these things, which are the strategies really. Setting the scene, I've mentioned that, connecting to the child's life experience, and that the child can ask you questions about the story as much as you would ask the child questions about the story. The child finishing your sentence, so these are the strategies again, connecting the picture to the text. Look, it's happening. What I've read in the story is actually happening in the picture. Can you see what's happening there? Summarizing, predicting, projecting, and retelling. And there's another tip sheet, and another one, the Pied Piper of Hamelin. So you can see that fairy tales are quite popular. There's Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. I wonder why Goldilocks went into the 3 Bears cave. I wonder what baby bear thought when he saw Goldilocks in his bed, etc. And that's it. So that is just a whistle-stop tour, if you like, through the Storytime project, how it came about and how it actually works. So I welcome your questions.
Joan, thanks a million. That was fantastic. I love the idea of putting the child in control, the transfer of power, as you call it. So there really is buy-in from the kids. I'm sure parents love seeing that. Okay, Peter, hand over to you now to round off the
Joan is a
presentation.
hard act to follow. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Peter Loughney, and I am the homeschool community liaison teacher for St. Brendan's Senior Boys School and Scoil Chaitriona, both in Coolock. Both schools are designated DESH schools or disadvantaged schools, DESH Band 1. We, as the majority of DESH schools, would be given an allocation of a homeschool community liaison teacher who whose job it will be to one of the roles of the HSEL will be to link with parents and try to get parents as involved as possible. So I suppose just from a HSEL or a homeschool community liaison point of view, I kind of give a practical overview of my experiences with the project, kind of why we got involved, how it works on a practical level, how we recruit, what we do with the parents throughout the project, and I suppose most importantly the benefits, what we get from the project at the end of it. So I suppose the Storytime project is a family literacy project, and part of my role as a HSEL teacher will be to help to promote literacy in the home, help to promote literacy with the parents. The Marino Storytime project it's a fun and engaging family literacy project. It's also a very, between all of the organisers and the collaborators, it's actually an exceptionally simple project as well, with what I feel are proven results. I suppose from my point of view, what I would say are what clearly defined aims of the project would be to improve the child's oral language, their vocabulary, possibly word identification skills as well. And I suppose then from a practical point of view, how do we recruit parents, or how do we start off? How does the homeschool community liaison teacher get involved? In our school, the Marino Storytime project has a fantastic reputation. I myself have been involved in it on eight separate occasions. We would promote the Storytime project at our new parent meetings. So we would have intake meetings at the start of the school year where we would gather, well, in pre-COVID times, which seemed like a lifetime ago, but we would gather the parents in the hall and speak to them on a range of issues, one of which would be the Marino Storytime project. We designed an expression of interest form as well. So we would talk about the project, we would hand out clipboards with these forms on them, ask the parents to sign with their contact details if they're interested in taking part. Due to the kind of, you can nearly say, the legacy or the history of the project in the school, there is always a good sign up to the project. Also, as Joan alluded to earlier, we would have target families, which I would make every effort to have a percentage of the families that are involved to be target families. We would then, once we have the expression of interest forms and we have all the details from Northside Partnership and Marino about the project, we would start to make phone calls to these parents to confirm that they're going to take part. We'd give them a detailed account of the project, and one thing which is non-negotiable really in my eyes really of the project is a commitment from the parents. So a commitment from the parents to take part and to try their best. We can support and we can help. Marino College, Joan can support and she can help. We can give you all the materials, but there must be a commitment or a buy-in from the parent. And to be fair, there always is. You know, there always is a buy-in. So initially, we would have a parent induction meeting held in Marino College. We would organise a meet-up and transport to to Marino College if it was necessary. We would provide then, sometimes we would have parents that might need additional support before, during, after the meeting. So we would just make sure that those parents are supported. We would ensure then that all resources are picked up that they're distributed, and that the parents, before they leave Marino College, that they're sure they kind of know what they're doing and what their aims are over the 5 or 6 weeks. Project itself would generally go on for between 5 and 6 weeks, and throughout the project we would usually have a weekly check-in with the parent. So again, in pre-COVID times, we would probably have met with the parent or phoned the parent, or sometimes you'd run into them by chance. We would talk to them. You possibly spend more of your time, your energy on our target families and going through the tip sheets. Talking up, like the tip sheets, as you can see, they're exceptionally well prepared, and it was be just about trying to get the parents as much as possible to use them, and to use some of the excellent strategies that are given to them. We would also be involved in the weekly distribution of the books and the organisation of a library visit throughout the project as well. Now, from my own personal experience over the last few years, I've seen that more and more parents are actually involved in our local library. Will be Coolock, Raheny and Donamead. We would be kind of in between the 3 areas. We would have a high percentage of our parents living in the Dublin 17, maybe Darndale, Carswood, Mountfew, that sort of area as well. So a lot of our parents actually are already involved in the library. So the library visit itself is a lot more straightforward than it used to be, I would find. Coming towards the end of the project, there would be a graduation ceremony in Marino College, and one, I suppose, of the nicest things that's happened in the last year or two is that the children are now allowed to attend the graduation, which I can assure causes a great deal of excitement among junior infants. You know, they really feel like now they're going off to get the Nobel Peace Prize, I think, when they're going to get the rosettes. But they really and genuinely love the fact that they're able to attend, and it's added considerably to the project, I would say. Their children are presented with awards. We would also then, from my own point of view, try to take some pictures, which we would then develop and give to the families after the project is finished. I suppose, why do we do it and what are the benefits? Any project that we would undertake like this and that would take up our time, at the end of it, we would, as a result of the investment of time, you would need to see some sort of benefit or result. So we would follow up with the parents, and a lot of the feedback which I've gotten from parents, I suppose one of the biggest benefits would be an increased bond that a parent might feel with their child, and even more so than an improvement in literacy, you might say, although you would see that as well. It will be that the child and the parent saying that they sit down together to read 10 or 15 minutes, and that has developed more of a bond between the parent and the child, which is really nice to see. Secondly, probably would be developing a habit of reading, and regardless of what it is that they're reading, to develop that period of time in the day, whether it's 5, 10 or 15 minutes, where they read something and they do it together. So it's habit forming, you might say. Also, this idea of a calm time or family time. Some of the parents will be quite openly tell you that their house could be busy, chaotic, crazy. They can use all sorts of words to describe where they live. And one of the things that they seem to really enjoy, or one major benefit, is that this is a couple of minutes of downtime for them, you know, for the child, for the parent, and it adds to maybe a sense of calmness in the house. I suppose, and lastly, another major benefit that I would have seen would be an improvement in children's vocabulary. And you would hear Joan make reference to it earlier on, where the child might be finishing the parent's sentences for them. Child might be starting to identify words, to break words down, or to identify sounds, all of which would help ultimately with word identification. So they, I suppose, would be the main benefits that we would see. Also, I would just like to say as well that the library idea of forgiving previous fines or indiscretions, as they phrase it, is a very good idea, because there have been one or two parents who said to me, God, I was nearly afraid to go into the library. I know I took a couple of books out back in 2004 and I don't know where they are, you know, so there was an element of fear there, which is, it was a good idea on Dublin City Library's part. This is my last year in HSCL. It's a 5-year rotation and I'm coming to the end of it now. So I would most definitely recommend the Marino Storytime project as a family literacy project, and it does give results, you might say. Joan also just mentioned just something there at the end about her being reluctant to take children out of the school. And I would say to anybody that is thinking of getting involved in this type of project or any family literacy project, not to be reluctant to take children out of school where there's an educational aim like that involved, whether it's a library visit or something to do with literacy. Just to bear in mind that, you know, it could be a one-off chance for a group of children that you're taking out of a school. So from a teacher, I am a teacher, from a teacher's point of view, you will get very little argument from them, and it could be something that would be greatly beneficial to the children. That's my tuppence worth, I suppose.
Peter, thanks a million. That was great. A fantastic explanation of how things happen, and it was lovely to hear you say that you found that there was an increased bond between the parents and the children, as well as improvements in literacy. But that is really great, and
that Fergus would be my experience as being the biggest benefit. I know it's a literacy, and it does have benefits in that regard, but the development or further development of a bond there, I think, would trumps everything. You know,
absolutely. And then it's a positive association with books and reading for both the child and the parent, because that bond that they both realize, or maybe the child only subconsciously realizes, that it'd be like when Sheila talked earlier about her mother reading the book to her, you know. So that's fantastic. You can't beat that. You can't top that. That's fantastic. So I'd just like to thank Sheila, Joan and Peter for a wonderful explanation of a brilliant project. I think it's very, you know, it's something that people can replicate around the country, whether you're in the library, whether you're a homeschool community liaison person. I think you can replicate this. It's very doable. It seems simple. And Joan's tip sheets, or whatever they're called, where I wonder, are absolutely fantastic. And we can share the presentations today, obviously. I'll just have a quick look at question stroke chat, and if anyone watching has a question or a comment or a suggestion, please type it into the question stroke chat box and I'll read them out if we have time. So let me see. So Sharon Murphy says, I've been using tip sheets with the Read to Succeed program I've been involved in. The parents really love them, and it gives them a starting point and some ideas that they can use. Great. Yeah, thanks Sharon for that. Sharon also sends in the comment, The Smartest Giant in Town by Julia Donaldson is a fantastic book for putting the strategies Joan spoke about into action. So that's The Smartest Giant in Town by Julia Donaldson. Okay, good few Julia Donaldson books. You're on a roll, Sharon. Another tip from Sharon. Parents have commented that talking about the emotions of the characters in the book help them to talk to their child about difficult situations, breakup of relationships, etc. That sounds very realistic, true, and helpful. So, you know, when the parents and the kids talk together about the emotions of the characters in the books, that's very beneficial to a child and to their parents, I presume. Have you anything to add to that, Joan or Peter?
Yeah.
Go on, sorry. Go on, Joan. Sorry.
No, sorry, Peter. I can't. I'm not making eye contact here with you because I'm just looking at my own screen. So excuse me if I'm not picking up on cues. But that is the absolute point of the relating the events to the child's life. It's an opportunity for them to grow emotionally as well. Do you know what I mean? That they kind of live vicariously through the story. And in a way, that's what we all do when we read a novel or we watch a film or we go to the theatre. We're looking to see how other people are living their lives, to see how that compares with our experience. And children are no different. So it actually helps to develop a sort of an emotional, it brings them towards an emotional maturity, if you like, by relating events in the story to the child's life. There's just one other thing I'd like to say, if you don't mind, and that is to say that everything that's on the tip sheet and all the strategies, they're not just something that came up out of my own head, if you like. They're very well researched. You know, this project is grounded in research on literacy. So people need not worry, you know, that it's just a notion that somebody took. It's basically everything about the project is grounded in research.
Peter, were you going to add to that?
I was just going to add to you, talking of the Julia Donaldson book there and talking about emotions, and it kind of struck me that, you know, in my role, as a homeschool community liaison teacher, particularly since the start of lockdown, that projects like this that promote communication between parents and children, they're even more important, because we're coming across you see it in the news, you see it in the media, and on the ground I can verify that there's an increase in, you know, mental health difficulties, domestic violence issues in the home. I'm seeing an increase in all of that. So projects like this that would promote that, the use of any books that would promote that, are working with children, and that way it's even more important and even more beneficial now at the moment, I feel, just to add that.
Okay, thanks. Sharon Murphy's also put in the comment that reading is seen as a pleasurable experience rather than a chore to be completed. So I think from what the three speakers have said, they would echo that. Thanks,
Yeah,
Sharon.
definitely. And Fergus, if you don't mind me just cutting in there for a second, we always say to the parents, this is not homework. And if this is becoming a chore, well, then we're doing something wrong, because this is not homework. It is a fun thing that people are opting in to do. And sometimes I think teachers in school as well, when they know the children are doing the Storytime project, they might ease off on other homework. I mean, if the children are in junior infants, arguably they shouldn't be getting homework anyway.
Yeah.
The only homework they should be getting is story reading, really, you know.
Okay, thanks. Katrina Keneally says, will this webinar be available to download and share with my colleagues? Yes, Katrina, by tomorrow or Monday at the very latest. We'll have it up on the NALA Ireland YouTube channel. You can watch it there, and I'm also going to email the presentations to everyone who's registered for today, so you get presentations with the tip sheets, etc. on it. Because the next question kind of follows that from Joan Moffat. Joan is in hiya, Joan is in Mayo Sligo Leitrim ETB. Would love to get the tip sheets. Great work, Joan. Love the idea. That's from Joan Moffat, from Joan to Joan. Yeah, I'll send over those PowerPoints, and the tip sheets are on it. Isn't that right, Joan? Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Absolutely happy to share. Very happy to share.
Okay. That's it. That's it on the questions, guys. It just leaves me to say a big thank you again to Sheila for initially contacting me and suggesting that we have this webinar. Thanks, Sheila, because it's been fantastic. I can see from the feedback and the comments that people have really enjoyed it and got a lot from it, and are enthused and maybe going to try it in their area. So that's what we want. That's what we want to do. We want to share and people to replicate it and run it in your town or your library or your homeschool community liaison area. Thanks, Peter and Joan, for your presentations and your time as well. And thanks everyone at home or in work or wherever you are for listening in. I hope you got something and you found it valuable. So I will send around the presentations, and in a day or two, I will send around the link to the video of this webinar so you can watch it again or send it to a colleague who's missed it. So thanks everyone, and bye-bye. I'll close down and end this webinar for all. Okay,
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.